Dear learners, welcome back to WSE Legendary Lives, where learning English opens the door not only to words and phrases, but also to the deep wisdom hidden in stories that have shaped civilizations. Today, we journey into the realm of the sea, into the roar of waves and the trembling of the earth itself. His name resounds with power and mystery: Poseidon, god of the sea, lord of storms, and the shaper of earthquakes. In the myths of Greece, he stands not merely as a divine figure, but as a living symbol of nature's untamed might. To sailors, he was both protector and destroyer. To cities, he was a giver of water, and yet also the bringer of floods. But this is not just a myth of a god with a trident. This is a mirror of ourselves, of anger and control, of rivalry and longing, of the storms that rage not only across the oceans, but also within the human heart. As you listen, you will not only discover the tale of Poseidon's wrath and triumphs, but also explore the questions that still matter to us today. What does it mean to hold power? What happens when pride is challenged? And can destruction ever lead to renewal? If you'd like to support our work, you're welcome to like, comment, share, or join us. Your support means a lot and helps us keep going. Prepare to enter a world where gods and mortals meet, where every wave hides a truth, and every earthquake shakes more than the ground. Let the legend begin. Long before the seas were mapped, before cities rose along their shores, the Greeks looked upon the waters with awe and fear. The Aegean, with its sudden storms and hidden depths, seemed alive, unpredictable, untamed, and dangerous. To them, the sea was not simply a body of water, but a force that could nourish life or swallow it whole. Out of this reverence and terror emerged the figure of Poseidon. Poseidon was born a son of the Titans Cronus and Rhea, brother to Zeus, the ruler of the skies, and Hades, the keeper of the underworld. His family background was heavy with struggle. Cronus, fearful of being overthrown by his children, devoured each one as they were born. Poseidon, too, would have suffered this fate had his mother not tricked Cronus by hiding him and giving her husband a stone in his place. Raised in secret, Poseidon was spared until Zeus, his younger brother, led a rebellion that freed them all. Together, the three brothers divided the cosmos. Zeus took the heavens, Hades the underworld, and Poseidon, the vast, restless sea. But unlike his siblings, Poseidon's domain was not a realm of pure authority. The sea could never be fully controlled. It was wild, shifting, always moving. To be its master meant to embody both generosity and wrath. Culturally, Poseidon represented more than waves. He was also god of earthquakes, his trident striking the earth and splitting it open. This double nature, of sea and land, of water and stone, made him a god who was not confined to one element. Farmers prayed to him for fertile land, sailors begged for safe passage, and city-states sought his favor in wars. To some, he was a father figure, to others, a terrifying punisher. In temples along the coast, sacrifices were offered, bulls thrown into the waves, horses dedicated in his honor. His image appeared with flowing beard, muscular body, and the powerful trident, a ruler not only of waters, but of chaos and change. But beneath this grandeur lay a deeper symbolism. Poseidon was the embodiment of forces humans could never fully master: the sea within us, the storms of anger and jealousy, the quakes of ambition that can shatter lives. His myths reveal not just the power of nature, but the fragile balance between order and chaos, restraint and rage. From his birth, then, Poseidon's story carried the mark of survival, rebellion, and division of power. He emerged not just as a god of waves, but as a force shaped by family conflict, rivalry, and the eternal struggle for balance. Yet destiny would not allow him to remain a distant ruler of waters. Soon, his first imbalance, a challenge to his pride and his place among gods and mortals, would rise, setting into motion the tides of his wrath. Though Poseidon was powerful, the sea itself mirrored his own inner restlessness. He was not a god of calm stillness but of constant motion, and so his life was marked by rivalry, jealousy, and the struggle for recognition. His first great imbalance arose not from the depths of the ocean, but from the challenge of belonging, the eternal contest for honor among gods. Zeus ruled the heavens, his authority recognized without question. Hades held the underworld, distant yet uncontested. But Poseidon's domain was vast, shifting, and difficult to define. The sea could not be measured, and earthquakes struck without warning. His power was great, but his authority was never absolute. This lack of stability became the first source of conflict in his heart. The first open challenge came when cities rose along the Mediterranean. Each city sought a divine protector, a god who would bless them with strength and identity. Poseidon desired such devotion. Yet when he competed with his niece, Athena, for the city of Athens, he faced bitter defeat. The myth tells us that Poseidon struck the ground with his trident, and a saltwater spring rose from the earth, a symbol of his mastery over water. But Athena offered the olive tree, a gift of peace, nourishment, and prosperity. The citizens chose her gift, and Athens became hers. For Poseidon, this was more than a contest. It was a wound to his pride, a reminder that strength alone does not always win loyalty. This loss marked the first imbalance of his story, the realization that his nature, powerful yet volatile, often pushed others away. His wrath was legendary. In anger, he flooded lands, sent storms against ships, and punished mortals who dared to defy him. Yet, beneath this fury lay a longing, to be loved as well as feared. Other tales tell of his pursuit of goddesses and mortals, of unions that produced both heroes and monsters. From these relationships, we glimpse a god whose desires were fierce but whose control was fragile. He fathered Theseus, the future hero of Athens, and yet also creatures like the Cyclops Polyphemus, feared for their brute strength. The contradiction was clear. Poseidon gave birth to both protectors and terrors, reflecting the dual face of the sea itself. The imbalance of Poseidon's early life was not only about external rivalries but also about the inner struggle to reconcile his power with acceptance. He wanted respect equal to Zeus, devotion equal to Athena, and control equal to Hades. But the truth was harsher. The sea could never be wholly possessed, and neither could the hearts of mortals. This is where Poseidon becomes more than a character of myth. He becomes a symbol of us all. Who has not felt the sting of rejection, the anger of being overlooked, or the storm that rises within when pride is wounded? And yet, like the sea, our own depths often conceal both destruction and creation. The god of the sea was learning a truth that every human eventually faces: power without purpose leads only to turmoil. But that was only the beginning. For soon, Poseidon would be tested, not just by rival gods, but by the weight of destiny itself. After the wound of losing Athens, Poseidon's story did not retreat into silence. Instead, the god of the sea found himself drawn into journeys that tested not only his strength but his identity. Each trial revealed that his power, immense as it was, needed to be guided by wisdom, a lesson he struggled to embrace. One of his greatest tests came when Zeus, the king of gods, declared himself the supreme ruler of Olympus. Poseidon, proud and unwilling to bow too easily, joined Hera and Athena in a daring rebellion. They conspired to bind Zeus, chaining him to weaken his authority. Yet, the plan failed. The sea god, despite his might, could not overturn destiny. Zeus broke free, punishing those who opposed him. Poseidon was humbled, forced to serve King Laomedon of Troy as punishment. Imagine it, the god of the boundless seas reduced to laboring like a mortal, building the walls of Troy alongside Apollo. His hands, accustomed to wielding storms, now lifted stones, shaping defenses that would one day define a war. For a god so proud, this was a bitter trial. Yet it carried meaning. Even the mightiest can be forced to bow, and even labor can become a form of learning. This was a divine test, not of strength, but of humility. The walls of Troy still stood as a reminder, even gods must sometimes endure limits, and even punishment can build legacies. But Poseidon's tests did not end there. His heart remained restless. His anger against mortals who disrespected him often brought storms upon sailors and destruction to coastlines. Yet, at other times, he showed generosity, gifting horses to men or helping heroes on their quests. His role was never simple, never entirely wrathful nor wholly kind. The journey of Poseidon is one of contradictions. He fought with Athena, quarreled with Zeus, and clashed with Hades over influence. But he also became a protector to heroes like Theseus, guiding his son through dangers. This duality reflected the eternal lesson of the sea: it can destroy without mercy, but it can also carry a voyager safely home. Another divine trial came in his rivalry with Odysseus, the cunning king of Ithaca. When Odysseus blinded the Cyclops Polyphemus, Poseidon's son, the sea god unleashed his wrath. For 10 years, he tormented Odysseus with storms, delays, and hardships, preventing his return home. And yet, this act was not only vengeance. It symbolized the human struggle against forces larger than ourselves, the way we all must face storms when our choices wound others. Was Poseidon cruel, or was he a mirror of the consequences of arrogance? Here lies a question worth pondering: is this myth of Poseidon merely fantasy, or is it a reflection of our inner lives, where pride and pain often summon storms we cannot easily escape? In these journeys and divine tests, Poseidon's power was undeniable, yet the true measure of his story came not from how many he punished, but from how he revealed the fragile balance between justice and revenge, authority and humility. The god of the sea was being shaped by his own storms. He could not always control his rage, but each challenge brought him closer to the heart of his destiny. For beyond these trials, a far greater test was approaching, one that would shake not only the seas, but the very foundations of the earth. The true turning point in Poseidon's mythic journey came not from the sea alone, but from his struggle to define what kind of power he would embody. Would he remain only a god of fury, feared by mortals and resented by gods? Or could he transform his wrath into something greater, something enduring? This trial revealed itself through war, the Trojan War, a conflict where mortals and gods alike were tested. Poseidon, still holding bitterness against Troy's king Laomedon for refusing to pay him after he had helped build the city's walls, found in the war an opportunity for retribution. He sided with the Greeks, unleashing his might against Troy. Yet his involvement was more than vengeance. It was a moment where Poseidon's hand shaped the fate of heroes and nations. When the war raged, Poseidon shook the earth itself, splitting the ground beneath armies, sending waves crashing against the Trojan coast. The walls he had once built now became a prison for those inside, as if the god was reclaiming his own creation. But in the midst of destruction, a revelation was forming. The war was not simply about who would win, but about the cost of wrath, pride, and betrayal. Poseidon's great trial was not whether he could destroy, he could, easily, but whether destruction alone would give him the honor he sought. The war showed him the hollowness of vengeance. The Greeks won, but at great cost, and Poseidon's fury left scars not only on Troy, but on his own image. To mortals, he was terrifying, yet distant. To fellow gods, he was powerful, yet mistrusted. Another turning point appeared in his feud with Odysseus. His relentless punishment of the hero raised a deeper question: how long should wrath last? By prolonging Odysseus's suffering, Poseidon revealed not only his strength, but also his inability to forgive. Each storm he summoned against Odysseus became a reflection of his own inner storm. And in this, we see the deeper meaning of his trial. Poseidon was not battling mortals, but himself. Even in mythology, this struggle feels human. Who among us has not clung to anger longer than we should, letting resentment control our actions? Poseidon's trial was the same, a battle to decide whether he would forever be defined by vengeance, or whether he could become something more. And so his turning point came not in a single moment of victory, but in the slow realization that wrath without justice is emptiness. His storms could delay Odysseus, but they could not erase destiny. His earthquakes could topple walls, but they could not build loyalty. For a god who longed to be honored, this truth was heavy: respect cannot be demanded through fear alone. The great trial of Poseidon is therefore less about the war of Troy or the voyage of Odysseus, and more about the eternal tension between pride and humility, wrath and restraint. It is the trial of every soul who has ever struggled with power, how to wield it without being consumed by it. Some say this tale warns us about the danger of anger. Others see it as a reminder that even gods must face the limits of their own hearts. What do you think? Is Poseidon's wrath simply cruelty, or is it a mirror of our own struggle to master the storms inside us? This turning point, marked by war, revenge, and restless punishment, prepared Poseidon for something even greater. For beyond the walls of Troy and the journeys of Odysseus lay the ultimate test, the moment when the god of the sea would face the climax of his transformation, where his power and his inner conflict would collide in a storm that shook both sea and land. The storm inside Poseidon reached its height in the myths where his rage, pride, and longing for recognition collided. If earlier moments revealed his wounds and trials, the climax of his story came when he stood at the threshold of his own transformation, where the god of seas and earthquakes had to confront what his power truly meant. In the ancient world, earthquakes were among the most terrifying of natural disasters. The Greeks called them the shaking of the earth, and to them, it was Poseidon who struck the ground with his trident, cracking stone, swallowing houses, toppling temples. When people cried out during an earthquake, they did not call on Zeus, but Poseidon. Here lay the paradox: he was not only lord of waters but master of the solid ground itself. His dominion spanned chaos and stability alike. And so, in the myths, when he shook the earth in anger, whether against Troy, against Odysseus, or against mortals who defied him, he revealed the full measure of his being. The climax of Poseidon's legend is not a single event but the moment when his wrath transcended the sea and shook the earth, uniting two realms in one unstoppable force. Yet this was also the moment of deepest reflection. His power could terrify, but did it elevate him above Zeus? Did it win him the love of mortals? The answer was no. His fury, while awe-inspiring, left him isolated, a figure feared rather than embraced. The earthquakes he unleashed were symbols of inner turmoil, a god unable to find balance within himself. But here lies the hidden transformation. Poseidon began to see that his role was not merely to punish, but to remind mortals of humility. The sea was vast, the earth unshakable, yet both could be overturned in a single instant. His storms and quakes were not only weapons of rage, but also teachers of reverence. They forced mortals to remember that life is fragile, that arrogance can be shattered, that pride has limits. This was his silent revelation. His purpose was not only to demand devotion, but to embody the reminder that all power, human or divine, is fragile before the greater forces of nature and destiny. In this climax, Poseidon's story mirrors our own. Each of us carries storms within, anger that can erupt like waves, ambitions that can quake through our lives. If left unchecked, they can destroy everything around us. But if we learn, as Poseidon slowly did, to see these storms as teachers rather than curses, then chaos itself becomes a path to wisdom. Imagine the god, trident in hand, standing upon the shore. Behind him, waves rise like mountains. Beneath him, the earth trembles. Around him, mortals look on with fear. And in his eyes, there is not only rage, but sorrow, for he understands at last that fear alone cannot satisfy the longing of the heart. He wanted to be loved, but love cannot be demanded. It must be given freely. This moment, where power meets longing, is the climax of Poseidon's transformation. He does not cease to be wrathful, nor does the sea ever become calm forever. But the god of the sea begins to embody a more complex truth, that destruction and renewal are inseparable, that his storms are not only ends, but beginnings. For from broken cities rose stronger ones, from drowned ships came new generations of sailors, and from shattered pride came lessons carved deep into memory. Poseidon's quakes and waves were not the end of life, but the shaking that forced life to begin again. Thus, the climax of his story is not victory in war, nor dominance over mortals, but a revelation. To rule is not only to strike, but to remind, that beneath the heavens of Zeus and the underworld of Hades, it is Poseidon who teaches the world that nothing stands unshaken forever. But transformation never ends in a single moment. What came after the climax was quieter, yet no less profound. The storms settled, and from them emerged a legacy that would endure across centuries. After the roar of storms and the shaking of the earth, there came a quieter truth: no god, however mighty, could remain forever in the grip of rage. For Poseidon, the later stories speak less of rebellion and vengeance, and more of presence, a god whose legacy became embedded in every wave, every earthquake, every whisper of the sea. Though he never ruled Olympus, his power remained undeniable. Sailors continued to pour wine into the sea before a voyage, whispering prayers for safe passage. Farmers prayed for his blessing so the earth would not tremble and ruin their harvest. Entire city-states kept shrines to him, building temples by the shore, where the crashing surf was itself a hymn. His legacy was not the love he once sought, but respect, a recognition that the sea, like life itself, demands reverence. His anger may have been feared, but his generosity was remembered as well. He gave horses to humanity, symbols of strength and nobility, creatures that carried warriors into battle and travelers across distance. He fathered heroes like Theseus, who liberated Athens, and builders of nations who carried forward his strength. Even in myths where he punished, there is an aftertaste of teaching. The storm that struck Odysseus did not destroy him but forged him, testing his endurance and wit until he returned home stronger than before. The earthquakes that shattered cities forced mortals to rebuild, reminding them of the impermanence of stone and the endurance of spirit. In this way, Poseidon's wrath was never empty. It became a path through which mortals discovered resilience. To the Greeks, Poseidon was not only a god of terror, but a guardian of balance. His storms reminded mortals of humility, but his calm seas carried them toward new lands. His earthquakes destroyed, but also cleared paths for renewal. He became a symbol of the eternal rhythm of destruction and creation, death and rebirth. Over time, his figure grew beyond myth. For sailors on the Mediterranean, he was not just an ancient story, but a living presence felt in the salt wind and crashing surf. Even today, when we speak of the wrath of the sea or the shaking earth, we echo Poseidon's name without realizing it. Perhaps his truest restoration came not in Olympus, but in the hearts of those who remembered him. He did not become the most beloved, but he became unforgettable, carved into culture, into geography, into the very language of fear and awe. He was the pulse of the ocean and the tremor of the ground, a reminder that life is both fragile and vast. And so, Poseidon's legacy endures as a paradox. He was feared, yet prayed to. He was wrathful, yet generous. He was defeated in contests, yet his trident still strikes terror into the imagination of humankind. His story restores a balance that even he long sought, the knowledge that respect is deeper than love, and that reverence, born of awe, can outlast time itself. But a legend is never complete without its lessons. Beyond storms and myths, Poseidon still whispers to us today. What meaning hides behind his restless waves, and what truths still echo in his quakes? To uncover this, we must look deeper into the symbolic heart of his story. Food, at its heart, is more than taste. It is memory, heritage, and identity. When a grandmother whispers a recipe to her granddaughter, she is not only teaching how to cook but also passing on resilience, history, and love. Every spice, every slow-cooked broth, every ritual of preparation carries with it the story of a people who refused to forget who they were. In a world racing toward convenience and mass production, these hidden recipes stand as gentle reminders. The most precious flavors are not found in fast food chains or shiny supermarket packages, but in the quiet kitchens of families who still remember. They are recipes born not from books, but from lived experience. Recipes without precise measurements, because the real measure is instinct, patience, and care. They invite us to pause, to respect what came before us, and to taste not just food but history itself. When we share these dishes, we share more than sustenance. We share memory, identity, and belonging. These recipes remind us that we do not only eat to live, we also eat to remember. Now, let me ask you, is there a dish from your childhood that still carries the taste of home, even when you are far away?